chaps, welcome to John Robson Guitar Tuition once again. As always, I do hope you're well. Now then, as you've gathered, today we're taking a look at what I learned from the music of Carlos Santana. Basically, we're going to be examining three things in this video, and I guess no analysis of Santana's music would be complete without a look at the Latin rhythms that underpin many of his tunes, so that's one of the things we're going to be looking at. The second thing is going to be, basically I'm going to describe how there's one of his tunes in particular that really did put the final piece of the jigsaw in place for me when it came to understanding modes. I was kind of most of the way there, and I had sort of an idea of what modes were all about, but that light bulb moment when suddenly it all made sense was as a result of one particular Santana tune. And finally, we're going to look at a melodic device he's quite fond of, that probably has some highfalutin textbook name, but I just refer to it as the long pickup. So that's what's on the agenda today. Let's begin by looking at the rhythms. Now we're going to look at two Latin flavoured rhythms in this video, and the first one is called the Son Clave 3-2 beat. Okay, don't be put off by that name. It makes perfect sense. It originates in a Cuban style of music called son. It's a rhythm that is played usually on a percussion instrument called a clave, and it goes through a 2-bar cycle where you play 3 accents in the first bar and 2 accents in the second bar. Son, clave, 3-2. So what's going on there then? Well, basically, if you imagine a count of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we have 2 bars of that. And in the first bar, you accent beat 1, you accent the and of beat 2, so that would be kind of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? Then you accent the 4 in that bar as well, so that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, that's the 3 part of the 3-2. And in the next bar, you simply accent beats 2 and 3, so that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And you put those together and you get a rhythm that goes like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Here it is mapped out a little bit more graphically than that. Now that's a rhythm that has many varied uses across different genres of music, and we're going to look at a couple of them now. Probably the best example of a Son Clave 3-2 rhythm is in a certain strumming pattern that you will no doubt recognise. I'll play it kind of slowly and count it, and then I'll run it up to speed. So this goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, can you tell what it is yet? Well, how about if I take it up to speed? I'm going to tell you how it's going to be. Exactly, it's that what is often referred to as the Bo Diddley rhythm, which you hear in that song and plenty of others. You know, I bet you didn't realise that Buddy Holly or the Stones had Latin influences in their music, but there it is. Now another use for the Son Clave 3-2 beat, which is something I use all the time, is for coming up with melodic sounding phrases, either in a melody that you're composing or in an improvised lead guitar part. Basically what I'm going to do is just take the first half of that beat where I'm hitting on the kind of the 1, the and of the 2, and on the 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? That is a fantastic rhythmic template to fit notes into that will pretty much guarantee that you sound melodic and catchy. Coming up next is a bit of a syrupy, country-ish kind of ballad that I threw together in about 10 minutes, to be honest. The lead guitar part is entirely improvised. I mean, I'm sort of doing all the usual stuff that I do in terms of ensuring I'll land on a chord note at an appropriate time. But listen to and watch how every alternate bar the notes fit into that Son Clave 3-2 rhythm. Here it is. Okay, so that is a fantastic way of coming up with something that's going to sound catchy and melodic. You can use it on strumming patterns, you can use it on riffs, you can use it on melodies, anything you like. And many of these examples are types of music where you wouldn't necessarily be thinking in terms of a Latin flavour. Now then, the other Latin rhythm we're going to look at is the cha-cha rhythm, or sometimes called the cha-cha-cha rhythm. So next time you are sitting with the missus in front of Strictly Come Dancing or Dancing with the Stars or whatever it's called where you live, then you can display a little bit of knowledge about what the cha-cha is and might just earn you a few brownie points. Basically, what's happening with a cha-cha rhythm is, once again, we have the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and count over 2 bars. And what we do here is we accent the 1 and the 2 in the first bar. We also, in the first bar, accent the and of the 3 and the and of the 4. Then in the second bar, there's a few different variations that you can have, but the one that we're going to look at is where you accent beats 3 and 4 in the second bar. So that's going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, so that's a cha-cha rhythm. Here's a few kind of instances of it. Now, any of these rhythmic templates, like the cha-cha that you've just seen there, or the Son Clave 3-2, are fantastic tools to have because they're brilliant ways of coming up with riffs. And as I say, you've already seen the kind of Son Clave 3-2 is pretty much the DNA of that Bo Diddley beat. But what about cha-cha? Can you make a riff with that? Is there any such thing as, for instance, a cha-cha metal crossover? Well, there is now. So there you have a pair of Latin flavoured rhythms which have their uses not only in Latin music but also elsewhere as well. Especially I find that Son Clave 3/2 thing is, absolutely essential. It just makes, as you heard earlier, an improvised melody or an improvised solo sound melodic. Providing you're doing all the stuff about landing on chord notes and stuff, it really does give a nice shape to a melody. I also use it quite a lot actually when I'm doing drum programming. Most drum fills that I do start off with that Son Clave 3/2 as some kind of template then that I'll kind of tweak and modify until it's how I want it to be. So it's a good rhythm to be fluent in, that's what I'm saying. Both of those rhythms, the Son Clave 3/2 and the cha-cha rhythm, were in the intro piece that you heard at the top of the video as well, by the way. The bass line was doing the Son Clave 3/2 like that, and the chords were playing a cha-cha rhythm. Like that. And if you think that rhythm sounds familiar, though that chord sequence sounds familiar, then you'd be correct. It is the main chord part underpinning a tune called Oye Como Va, which isn't a Santana tune. Well, he did a version of it, he covered it on the Abraxas album, and for the life of me I can't remember offhand who did the original version. Somebody will probably tell me in the comments section below. But anyway, that is the tune which really, as I was saying earlier, made the whole kind of modal jigsaw come together for me. Let me explain. I knew, or I thought I knew anyway, back when I was kind of learning all this sort of stuff, that song is in A minor, okay, because it's centered largely around an A minor 7 chord. And it certainly sounded fine when I played an A minor pentatonic over the top of it. However, it just never sounded quite Carlos, if you know what I mean. It just never had the same kind of exotic flavour to it that he seemed to be able to achieve. And the other thing that was confusing me about the chord sequence was that by now I'd kind of figured out that the key of A minor was the same thing as the key of C major. I knew this because I could play A minor pentatonic in a C major context. It was also the C major pentatonic. I knew about relative majors and minors basically. And the thing I found confusing about Oye Como Va was the fact that I knew for certain that the key of A minor or the key of C major doesn't have a D chord in it, but there's a D chord in this tune. It goes A minor 7 to D major. Now everything I knew about what's going on in a minor key told me that that shouldn't be a D major, it should be a D minor. And I would often try and play along and make the D minor chord fit somehow, and it just, obviously it was never going to work. But then I had a little bit of a light bulb moment thanks to a certain brand of instant mashed potato. Okay, yeah, bear with me. Anybody who grew up in the 70s in the UK will be familiar with this little jingle for mash, get smash. Okay, and I kind of knew that. I don't know where I knew it from or how I figured it out, but I knew that A minor going to a D chord will resolve to a G chord. It's what I later found out is actually called a 2-5-1 sequence. So I knew that A minor or A minor 7 to D, that was basically the key of G major. So then it kind of dawned on me, well, what we're doing here with Oye Como Va is going from an A minor to a D and then just not going to the G chord. We're coming back to the A minor. So it's A minor 7 to D, kind of continually, almost in a loop. And then suddenly the light bulb moment occurred. It was like, okay, yes, so what I'm doing is I'm in the key of G major, but I'm somehow kind of focusing on the A minor chord. rather than the G chord. Isn't that supposed to be what a mode is all about? Because up until then, what I'd learned about modes was, oh well, if you want the A Dorian mode, you take a G major scale and you start it on an A note. And that made no sense to me at all, because it was like, well, okay, so when I'm improvising, when I'm soloing, when I'm jamming, does that mean that my licks always have to start on an A note? That's a bit restrictive, isn't it? But it's not about where you start. It's about where the emphasis is placed. And in this tune, Oye Como Va, this is the first one that I kind of twigged this on, where the emphasis is placed on the A note by making the chord sequence centre on the chord that's built on the A note, the A minor 7 chord. And then it struck me a little bit more that, well, I can actually physically see on the guitar that the D chord has this note in it, 7th fret on the B string. Now, did I know it was an F sharp note at the time? Probably, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, but then the leap of faith happened where I thought, well, what happens if I add that note into a solo? And suddenly I started getting... And that is one of the kind of signature licks in Oye Como Va. And suddenly, yes, it all made sense. So then, you know, adding the extra notes into a pentatonic to get a mode was suddenly something I could do and something that made sense. And that was all thanks to figuring out what was going on in Oye Como Va. Anyway, moving on, the final thing I want to talk about today is this phenomenon I've talked about called the long pickup. So, the long pickup. What is it and how is it useful? Well, you may recall that in a previous video I mentioned that any melody or guitar solo is going to be made up of phrases, and those phrases will tend to sound best if they cross from one bar into another. Okay, basically your phrase begins in bar 1 and concludes in bar 2, that sort of thing. That part of the phrase which is in bar 1 is known as the pickup. And to put it simply, Carlos is quite fond of a long pickup. And to illustrate that, I'm just going to dial in a tempo on the metronome. I need to be about 70 beats per minute for this, so bear with me. Here it is, that'll do. Right, to illustrate this, let's have a look at the beginning of the melody from Europa. Here's the metronome and I'll play the melody over the top. Now, if you were counting that, you'll have noticed that the structure of that was like this. It goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Most of that phrase is in the pickup bar. There's only one note kind of landing in bar 2, if you like. Most of the phrase is in bar 1. That's a long pickup. You contrast that with the pickup phrase from a tune by a different player. Let's pick Gary Moore. A tune of his, maybe like Still Got the Blues. Again, we've got a phrase which crosses from one bar to another, but listen how different it is. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? We don't begin the pickup phrase until we're kind of halfway through beat 4, and that is more of a usual way of doing it, starting the phrase somewhere around about beat 4 in bar 1 and then going into bar 2. Carlos prefers a longer pickup that uses up more of bar 1. It's a characteristic of his playing. Another track of his which does this, about the same tempo, so I'll use the same setting on the metronome, is Samba Petit. Here's the pickup from that. Okay, so once again you can see that what I'm doing, or what he does, is we start quite near the beginning of bar 1. So that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. There's only one note from that phrase which is actually entering bar 2. Most of the phrase is in the pickup, making it a long pickup. And you find this again and again and again in his playing. I used a similar kind of concept when I was doing the sort of Santana-esque intro piece for this video. I think the lick I played was something like that. No, it was actually 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I can play all the Santana's licks perfectly, but my own is where I stumble. But yeah, it basically does the same thing. It starts on the end of the 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and... Okay, so I'm putting 2 notes into bar 2, but the majority of that phrase is in the long pickup bar. As I say, it's something that other guitarists will tend to do from time to time, but it's 9 times out of 10 it's one of the things that you will notice in a Carlos Santana solo. It's in Black Magic Woman, it's in She's Not There, it's in, you know, some of his more contemporary stuff like Victory is one as well. Listen out for these and see if you can spot that long pickup idea. And with that, I think we'll conclude this rather personal perspective on what I learned from the music of Carlos Santana. I hope you found it interesting, useful, maybe even a little bit inspiring. And if so, please hit the subscribe button. That way you will get to see more videos like this. Before I go, I'm just going to give you a quick update on the Guitars for Good Causes campaign. Basically, there is around £350 in the fund at the moment, and I'm just waiting for that to hit my bank account so I can go out and buy some guitars, which I will then review, obviously. And if you're not sure what this Guitars for Good Causes thing is all about, basically you guys seem to like the guitar reviews that I do, so I'm raising money to fund guitars to review on this channel. The guitars will then be auctioned off and the proceeds going to a local charity on Teesside which helps terminally ill children. So, you know, it's a very deserving cause. I don't make a penny piece out of this. I'm doing it because I believe in Zoe's Place, the charity that I'm helping, and yes, it is helping grow my channel, but that's more of a kind of side benefit, to be honest with you. And yeah, there's about £350 in the pot at the moment, and just waiting for that to filter through to me, and when it does, we'll go guitar shopping together. I'll just mention as well that if you want some tailored one-to-one guitar tuition, then give me a shout via the details at the end of this video. If you live on Teesside in the northeast of England, you can come along for a face-to-face lesson, or wherever you are in the world you can have a lesson via Skype, and whichever way you do it, your first lesson is free, so you've got nothing to lose. And with that, I'll bid you all a good day and look forward to seeing you all again next time. Bye for now, folks.